Hey guys, Zero here. Welcome to Let's Play RuneScape. I am pretty excited to cover this topic today, and we'll get to that. But check this out. The display mode has been updated. Previously, there was a section here, another button, where you could choose the software mode. Now, it turns out for the vast majority of people, this was a bad way to play. And then at the same time, there was a huge number of people who used software mode, so that was awesome. They say DirectX is great, but for myself, I find OpenGL works great. So that's what I tend to use. Ooh, ooh, frame lagging. Maybe not that great. No, it's a little better now. Anyway, so what I want to talk about today is gambling. Now, I don't always just talk about a thing, right? Um, but obviously, Jagex recently, they were saying, hey, we're going to leave it up to you guys. We're going to let you guys decide what kind of thing in the game is going to deal with those douchebags, in my opinion, who are at the Grand Exchange that are hosting flower games and basically gradually stealing money from real players, right? They see that they can exploit an advantage that is built into the way that flowers come up, and so they can play this silly hot cold game or other silly games, right? These hosts, they're screwing the players. That's my opinion. Um, the hosts are definitely getting the best of it. They are providing entertainment, you could say, but it's all BS, in my opinion. These hosts are screwing legitimate players. So Jagex wants to deal with that, and it's a great thing. It's very good, very, very good. I'm so happy they finally decided to do this. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can't tell people not to gamble, right? That's not my business. Some people love to just play games of pure luck. So I can't say to them in a very simple way that, hey, you know what? Why do that, right? This silly kind of novelty. Maybe there's other novel things that you could get your kind of entertainment from that would be more productive. That doesn't really seem to be something I can convince people of. So let's talk about gambling, right? Gambling games, it's a kind of game where progress over the long term is not guaranteed. In other words, let's say you've got a million GP in game and you start gambling, well, you might lose all of it, right? You could lose all of it. There's that possibility. There's that chance, which is the excitement about gambling games in a way. But at the same time, that's not a guarantee either. You could win in the long term as well under some types of gambling games. But there's a lot of different dynamics, and these are very important. Um, in gambling games, you have types where there's skill versus no skill, right, or non-skilled games. Skill games in gambling have luck and skill as a combination. In a skill game, in the long term, the person who is most skilled can actually expect to win in the long term. In non-skill games, it's determined by luck alone, and neither player in the game has an advantage over the other one by being more skillful, because skill is not a factor. Now, it's a range, right? So you can have games where the level of skill is very simple, and it's easy to resolve what the best strategy is. A game like that would be something like X's and O's, right? Where if you play the best possible strategy, you will never lose, right? Optimal strategy, you don't lose. But there's more types here, more dynamics to gambling. Another one is zero-sum versus K-sum games, where it's a constant negative or constant positive sum game. In a zero-sum game, it means that no money is added or removed by playing this game. So no matter how many times you play, no money is added or removed. You just either lose money to the other player or they win, or you win money from them, right? And PKing, the way it is right now, is kind of like a zero-sum game. If you die, you lose everything you have. It goes to the other player, and hopefully they're able to pick it up. not have a despawn, or they die to you, you kill them, and you can hopefully pick up all their stuff, and so there's no one, like the cumulative gain is zero, right? Because both players are either winning or losing the same amount, right? So it's a zero-sum game. Now, a constant negative-sum game is the kind of game that you see with like silly things like lottery tickets or bingo games or casinos or and so on and so on and so on. And they justify it to say that they're providing a service, which is some type of entertainment, right? Where it's this novelty game that, if you buy a ticket in something, right? Now, the people who are selling you that ticket take something away. So a constant negative sum game is basically where something is constantly being removed over time. So no player in a constant negative sum game that also has no skill should expect to win money in the long term. This is very important. So if there's no skill involved and if it's a constant negative sum game, then no one wins, right? So the question is, do we want to have everyone be able to win a little bit in this game? If so, then we want to have a constant positive sum game. Now, if you're in a skill-based game, heavily skill-based game that's constant positive sum game as well, then the least skilled players are also going to lose in the long term, and that could be a problem for them. I'm just going to check my ship. Woo! Yes! I won. So skill can play a role in whether or not everyone wins or loses, right? But in a zero skill game that's constant positive sum, everybody wins in the long term. They just have to play, and eventually they win. Let's not deal with this now. I'm going to get distracted. There are more dynamics to gambling. It's part of the reason why it's so complicated. You can have hosted versus unhosted games. So a hosted game right now, or a game that has a kind of a house element to it, would be something like the flower game. You have a host, right? And by and large, hosted games are games where the host has an advantage, right? Where the dealer wins, where the host has this decided advantage that's built in. It's systemic, right? So hosted games are games where the house or the host retains an advantage systematically. Only the host can expect to win in the long term. So again, we have this kind of like, it's not a constant negative or positive sum game, right? But the host wins most of the money in the long term. Unhosted games are where all players involved are not systematically held at a disadvantage. So unhosted games are terrific. You don't want to have one player who's putting in all this extra work to do, this thing, because then they feel like they should get something for it. It's not necessary. We can just build it into the game, right? And then no one is getting screwed in the long term by hosts. We don't have to worry about that. Then there's another thing. This one is also important, mostly because it can cause so many headaches. This is the high versus low variance game. Now, variance is basically the rate of change. It's the extent of the dispersion. It describes the rate to the extent to which things can change over time. So variance is a really interesting concept for statistics and stuff like that. So in a high variance game, these are the kind of games where you can win or lose a lot over time by chance alone. So you can have maybe, let's say we have a game where we decide to play 1,000 times, similar to the simulation I showed you guys before. So we play 1,000 times. In a high variance game, we will not reach the long term with a high probability. So let's say we have a zero-sum game and there's no skill, which means that in the long term, we should not expect to win or lose anything, right? In a high variance game, we could win or lose quite a bit over quite a long period of time. We could play 1,000 games and win or lose a ton, right? In a high variance game. But in a low variance game, we would tend to win or lose much less. We would be much more likely to be near the long term, near zero in over 1,000 games. So the high variance game, it tends to be the kind of game that appeals to people who actually like gambling. They kind of love to hate high variance. Low variance just tends to mean less heartache. So we know that Jagex is kind of putting it on us. It's going to be in our hands soon, really soon. It's going to be up to us to decide how um, gambling in game is dealt with, right? Now, luck and risk in games, I think is fine. It's totally fine. I'm not exactly sure how to define what gambling is within that context, but what we can say is that the type of flower game stuff that we see going on, definitely it's gambling, right? The Squeal of Fortune, I mean, it's been defined as non-gambling. I actually disagree with that because you're investing something for the chance of something else. But, legally it's not considered gambling because you know what you're getting. You're getting these spins, you're getting this in-game currency or goods or something. So, I mean, obviously it's a not clear situation. But if they leave it up to us, if we get to make a decision, right, we ought to be able to decide what we think is best. For myself, I really think that for people who enjoy gambling, the kind of thing that they want is a game that involves some skill, right? And you want to have like a lot of skill, some skill, and no skill. You want to have all three because some people don't like skill games. You want to have a constant positive sum game because that means that if you're putting in a bit of time, maybe it requires you to think or make decisions, right? You want to get something out of it in the long term for both players. That's key, right? You want to profit in the long term, so a constant positive sum game is important. You want to have it unhosted because hosts are dramatically interested in taking advantage of actual players. That's all they do. Finally, there should be some debate about whether or not to make it high or low variance. High variance games are good for the in-game economy. Occasionally, it will give someone a lot of GP that they can spend on stuff that they like. So that's okay, right? But if it's a constant positive sum game, both players are going to win in the long term. It's going to give you some pain sometimes. You'll lose over long terms. You'll curse a Jagex, you'll whatever, but then, you'll have stretches where you win as well, and these will be kind of invigorating and exciting. So a high variance game could work too. So my recommendation, if we're looking at what to do about these gambling games that people like to play, involve different levels of skill, maybe have at least 3 different types of games. One where the skill component is difficult enough where it's not easy to determine what the best strategy is. One where it's kind of easy if you think about it, and one where there's no skill involved. Have them be constant positive sum games where every player involved expects to win in the long term by contributing their time, and have them be unhosted and high variance. So no host that's trying to take advantage of the players, and no high variance no low variance situation where it can be very swingy, kind of very random, and have a lot of different types of change that can go on. So yeah, I mean, this might be a bit cryptic. I hope not. I hope that it's something that people are actually interested in. I know at least there's some players that like to gamble in this game, and if Jagex is going to be prepared to do something about it, then we have to be prepared to tell them what is actually going to be a format that's entertaining for all of the real players involved, not just scumbags that are trying to take advantage and get their best, okay? So that's all I got to say for today. Thanks very much for listening. I will talk to you guys next time. And as a last thing, I'm going to start releasing the World Wakes videos probably about a week after the day that it was released. So something to look forward to. So thanks very much, guys. I will talk to you later.